Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, staff, fellow council members. Before we start, I'd just like to acknowledge our gathering this evening with gratitude on the traditional unceded territory of the Siouxsie people who have walked gently on this land for me. We have a full agenda tonight, 2 public hearings and a regular council meeting. So we will start with the first public hearing. That is on the zoning application. The public hearing has been called to deal with the bylaw amendment to the zoning bylaw number 1099, 2024, whereby an additional use is proposed for a specific location within the C1A mixed use commercial zone. As per the requirements of the Local Government Act, the public will have an opportunity to provide input on the proposed amending bylaw. So for the sake of order, we just need to establish the ground rules for the public hearing, and they are applicable to the bylaw that this is subject to the hearing as follows. Each member of the public will have 3 minutes to speak on each of the bylaws as they are presented. The input should be strictly on the bylaw that is the subject of the public hearing. If time permits, you may take your turn to speak again after all members have spoken. There will be no heckling or booing or applause during this proceedings, please. We must have an atmosphere where everyone has an opportunity to express their views without the feeling of intimidation. This will allow the public hearing process to move smoothly and quickly. Before speaking, we ask that you state your name and address for our records for the public hearing. As stated earlier, your input is strictly with the contents of the bylaw and no deviation shall be permitted. No debate is permitted either. Council members may ask for clarification of input being provided. Any questions on the public process? Seeing none, I'll turn to the CAO. Could you introduce the amending bylaw, please, sir?
I will do that. The proposed zoning amendment bylaw 1099, 2024 intends to add an accessory use to a property under the C1A mixed use commercial zone with an address of 87 Darnell Road. The added accessory use would be an adult vape shop store, and the definitions of e-cigarette and vapor products are also proposed for the bylaw. Hence, the amending bylaw presented is here for your consideration. The required public notices under the Local Government Act have been issued for the zoning bylaw amendment, and all statutory requirements have been met. Only one written comment has been received on the proposed zoning amendment bylaw. Just as a matter of note, the adjacent neighbors were advised of the proposal. So was the school board, Highland Health, and the RCMP. So as I've indicated, there's been only one written input on the proposed zoning amendment bylaw. The public have had an opportunity to review the amending bylaw and applicable related documents in the meantime.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Just to clarify for those that are watching, the reason for the public hearing is an amendment to the allowable uses within the zone. And it is mandated by the Local Government Act that we have a public hearing should those be implemented for ancillary uses, additional uses. I'll turn to the applicant for input. If you do have some, you're more than welcome to provide that at this time.
I think, first of all, excuse me, I've got laryngitis. I'm not viable shedding. So, my name is Tim Hilliard. I'm a co-owner with my son Lucas Hilliard, and we live at 8904 Palmer Way. I don't really have any comments. I did submit a information booklet that I hope people have had a chance to review, and that's about all I have to say.
Perfect. Those have been spread to council for their opportunity to read those, and I understand you also went around the community to various entities to provide that information, so.
Yeah, we understand that, obviously, we want to protect our youth. And, having a vape shop, in town would create some questions about whether we are protecting our youth. We're 19 age and over. We have our stores vinyl covered. And we also, put all of our, employees through a training program, that's, run by, BC Tobacco and Vaping Control Act and BC and Tobacco and Vaping Enforcement. And they conduct mystery shops at our stores regularly to make sure that we're complying. So we take protecting our youth very seriously.
Thank you.
Also have ID card scanners as well. To help enforce that as well, so PC IDs show very clearly what age they are. If there's any question in that, or if there's question if the ID is legitimate or not as well. So,
Thank you.
we use them.
And now I'm gonna turn to the public, if there's any input, if I could ask that you come forward so the owl can pick you up during the video recording. And that will be transmitted and provided for public viewing at that time. Is there any members of the public with any input on this?
Bill Garrett, 220 Lake Park Road. I'm just curious as to how many job opportunities the vape shop would provide to the community.
Question through to the phone.
Good question. We plan to hire one manager full-time locally, as well as an associate, a salesperson, part-time.
So possibility of two positions.
Yeah, for Kentucky, we see how it's sort of bottom wise.
Should. Any further public input? For a third time, looking for public input on. We'll get you in a minute, man. Deal with the important people first. Any further input from the public for the final time? Would you step forward, man? I have to keep it formal.
Catherine Worsley, and I'm at 320 Lake Park here in Lake Cowichan. I'm also staff of the Cowichan Lake District Chamber of Commerce, and we did have some dealings with the individuals and phone calls. So looking at the business that is going to be going into town, I think that it's a great opportunity for our economic development coming into our area. And thank you for asking the question about staffing. Just wanted to make sure that this would be required staffing that are of age 19 plus, not the underage, that would be hired. And as well, in regards to the school and the bylaw, if there's any other changes or any other recommendations from the town that you'd be willing to abide by those.
We have to have 19 plus employees in our store. You simply have to be 19 to even set foot in the store. So employees do have to be 19 plus.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other public input. I'll turn to my council members to see if there are questions. I saw Councillor Womaka.
Oh, did I? Thank you, sir. One, in your presentation, when I read through it, it was talking about, which is a good thing about community sponsor. And the only thing that I was concerned about is that there not be any advertising at local sports events, so sponsorship of sports teams, advertising in the ball field and around the hockey rink. I know you can't advertise alcohol or cigarettes or the marijuana dispensaries. I don't know if that's already in your federal regulations, and if not, I would like to see it.
It's a provincial jurisdiction under provincial legislation. And basically what they said, you can advertise a vaping brand like today. You can't advertise products. Now, obviously, we want to work with the community. We don't want to do anything distasteful, but we'd like to support the community within existing legislation. And before we do anything, we would want to make sure all the stakeholders are comfortable with that.
I think one of the concerns was sponsorship of youth teams, for instance.
Absolutely
That
not.
would not be implemented.
We have thought about adult teams, but again, want to do what's right, what's tasteful. It's more to return to the community to benefit us. So, anything that we do in that area would be, we make sure all the stakeholders are comfortable.
Thank you, that is my only concern.
Councillor Frisbee?
Just through to CAO, are gas stations in Lake Cowichan at the moment allowed to say sell vape products?
I can
Not that
answer
I'm
that.
aware.
As a user of the product, yes, you can purchase vape products from Esso or Co-op.
They have to be tobacco flavors,
Yeah.
or menthol flavors. No flavorings themselves. That has to be a specialty vape shop like what ours would be. So I believe Fields sells a specific product but it's only tobacco flavor itself. We provide an alternative to that because over 90% of our users don't actually use tobacco flavors because it reminds them of smoking, and we're trying to help people get off that. That's our goal. To provide a help. Essentially, so.
Oh,
Yeah, I was just wondering about I don't know if we can speak about your terms specifically about your lease, but how long do you envision, trialing this store for? Is here for a long run, or you having a trial period, or how's it gonna work?
We have a sublease from Westland Insurance for 1.5 years, we found really advantageous.
Must be taking over their lease.
This is the first small town store that Eastgate brand has gone into. And so it's a bit of an experiment, and if it doesn't fly within 1.5 years, you won't exercise the option to release.
Yeah.
any further questions? So it appears that that is it for questions and comments. And so with the closure of this hearing, no further verbal or written presentations on this amending bylaw will be received by council or any member of council. And speaking to the written submission, Mr. CAO, that was just one that was received.
Correct.
Thank you very much. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment number 1099-2024 will be returned to the council for further consideration. Thank you for your time, and now we'll go on to the agenda later on this evening. We have another public hearing on the official community plan update. So I would like to call this public hearing to order. As per the requirement of the Local Government Act, we are providing you with the opportunity to provide verbal input on the proposed bylaw 1097-2024, which updates the previous official community plan that was adopted in 2019. An official community plan must at a minimum include statements and map designations for the town, and must, along with other things, include the approximate location, amount, type, and density of residential, commercial, recreation, and institutional uses, and anticipated housing needs over a period of at least 5 years. Restrictions on the use of land that is subject to hazardous conditions or that is environmentally sensitive to development. It will include the designation of various areas as development permit areas. An official community plan must include targets for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the area covered by the plan, and policies and actions of the local government proposed with respect to achieving those targets. The current OCP bylaw will be repealed on adoption of the new OCP by this council. The OCP, official community plan, as proposed, will govern future development and land use applications throughout the town. The OCP is for the entire town, The current OCD was adopted in 2019. And the Advisory Planning Commission was thrust with the responsibility of articulating the vision for the future development of the town. And it has done a commendable job in that regard with the official community plan. And which is now the subject of this public hearing. A community-wide workshop on the draft official community plan was held in September 2023. And the public helped guide the Advisory Planning Commission in its work. And you'll note along the wall, we have the input from that public meeting, just for your perusal if need be. So again, the ground rules are the same as the last one. Each member will have 3 minutes to speak on the proposed bylaw. And if time permits, you may have your turn to speak again after all members have spoken. There will be no heckling or booting, I don't expect any. During these proceedings, we must have an atmosphere which allows everyone an opportunity to express their views without feeling intimidated. This would allow this public hearing process to move smoothly and quickly. Again, before speaking, if you would state your full name and address for our records. Your input must deal strictly with the contents of the bylaw and no deviation will be permitted. Council members may ask for clarification of the input being provided. Any questions on the process for this public hearing? Seeing none, I will ask the CAO or the planner to please speak to the next stage.
The official community plan bylaw 1097 has been given first and second readings by council. These occurred on December 19, 2023. The required public notices on the Local Government Act have been issued and the statutory requirements have been met. We have received no written input on the bylaw.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn to the consulting planner who can provide additional details in the revised OCP. We do speak in acronyms here. I'll try to include the official names. The public is aware of what you're talking about. Sir.
If I may, there's just a correction. The CBRD did provide a comment and basically saying they have no comment.
Correct. Because they had no input on the. Thank you, James.
Yeah, that's why we were just talking to each other and I thought it'd be best. Oh, I'm James Van Hemert. I'm the consulting planner for the town and I work very closely with the Advisory Planning Commission on this work. What I'm going to do is take a few minutes and walk you through what we did and what we learned and what the changes were to the plan. And so instead of a PowerPoint presentation, which is difficult here because, well, I don't have a projector. I'm going to use what I call slow point, and that's analog. It's just paper and my voice. So, what I'm going to do is, as I said, walk you through this, and I'm going to point and describe some of the maps on the wall, which is really the core element, the part of the plan that it all comes to life in the maps. So, what is the official community plan? Well, the mayor has already taken care of this in his opening comments, so I'm not going to go through this because he's already done it. So I'm just going to keep moving on. That page is already done. Okay, I will add one thing, just the bottom line. There is a very strong emphasis now, and this came through in the process as well. On one hand, there's a line in the Local Government Act about housing and housing for 5-year supply. But then they go back to housing again at the bottom, at the end of the Local Government Act piece, and they speak to rental, affordability, and special needs housing. And that theme, by the way, continues on, as you'll see. So by way of some background, so as part of this process, anytime you update a plan, you really need to take a look at what the census tells you about the community. So population, the makeup of the population, and these are just a few of the highlights. So in 2021, our population was 3,325. And that is an increase of only a few percentage points really over the previous census 5 years earlier. So the population has really stabilized and has not been even reaching 1% a year in the last few years. And on that basis, our forecast is quite modest. At this point, we don't see any reason yet why the population will grow much faster. So by 2043, which is 20 years away, 4,000 to 4,200 people. So we will reach 4,000. That's quite likely within that time frame. But growth has been modest. That could change, but at this point, that's where we're at. Median household income in 2020 was $68,000. Prevalence of low income after tax was just under 12%. That's actually not as severe as it was in past years. I know in the past, we talked a lot about low income here. That's leveled off, and I think part of it is just the changing nature of the population and increased income from households who have jobs. Occupations, the top occupations, as reported by the census, almost 32% of the people work in sales and service. And just over 20% trade, transport, equipment operation. And as far as where people go, the census asks a lot of questions about commuting. And we like to know that too, because that has an impact on our road system and where people are traveling. 41% of the people here work in town. And 50% work within the region. The remaining 9% either work out of province or, they'll commute all the way to Victoria. So that's the commuter. Boys, that's just a few highlights. So what is new since the major update in 2018? The whole plan was rewritten. We had working groups meeting here. There was different topics. We had a lot of people involved for a whole year. In fact, I think it was 18 months. This revision is not as large. It was more targeted, and part of the reason is, as a living document, the plan has received a number of amendments within the last 5 years. So, in 2021, we updated the streams, water course and stream side development permit area, updated map, and some updated policies. We also included a new wildfire hazard policy section guidelines, because work had been done. And so, and we have there's a map on the wall here. It's somewhere, basically that. The whole town is in high wildfire risk. So, but mapping it is important, because what that means is that every development that comes forward is reviewed by us, and a report is done, and we established covenants restricting how people build and how they landscape on residential subdivisions in particular. And then in 2022, we added, because we have land in the agricultural land reserve, and we were hoping, that's another sidebar, I won't dive into too far, but it's a former school site. We applied agricultural policy on there because we were hopeful that that land would be transferred to the town. So we did that work in the spirit of the direction provided by the Agricultural Land Commission. So that was an amendment, and then a small amendment was done just to link an update on the land use designations and which zoning bylaw districts link with those areas. So that was another amendment in 2022. So this amendment that is before you now covers several areas, in particular housing. It's probably the #1 area of updated policy. Infrastructure, including transportation. There's been some updates. I'll go into that in a little bit of detail. Climate adaptation and mitigation. That was very important to the public who came here in September. And then some updated land use mapping. So let's see, I'm going to walk over here. I created something to help everybody put the pieces together. It just didn't fit on my chart because I had to do this in landscape orientation. Okay, so I hope you like this. Vision on this, thank you, Mayor. So on vision, and I want to say this. So we spent a lot of time with the Advisory Planning Commission 10 years ago on a vision statement, which is right over here, okay? This is important because I'm connecting a lot of dots here. The vision statement, okay? We asked the public to weigh in last September with green dots, okay? It got a lot of support. But we did also ask, would you change anything? So somebody wrote down, add the word inclusive as part of the descriptor of the community. So, and then as the public does, I love this, the public, they don't need directions. Somebody wrote that down, add inclusive. And then all the people that followed took their green dots and they just stuck them on that word like that. So it's now in the document. So that's the vision. And so from this comes three things. The plan was organized this way 5 years ago. Health and wellness, built environment, and natural environment. So under those categories, so you can see how all the pieces fit together nicely, because the document can be a little bit intimidating. So then I just did these. So here's 4 areas. There may be 1 or 2 more, but these are the primary ones. So under health and wellness, we put housing, parks, recreation, and economic development. Well, the areas where we spent most of our time updating was in housing, but this is the whole plan. And then under built environment, we have transportation, servicing. You know, these are the nuts and bolts of how things operate: the water, the sewer, the roads, uptown, downtown policy. We spent a lot of time taking a look at that. Although not this update, this is just describing the whole plan. And then on the natural environment, greenways, waterfront, and greenhouse gases. So we spent a fair bit of time in there this year, on adaptation and mitigation. And a few more words on that in a moment. So again, this is all the goals and objectives. And how does it get done? So we have inside the plan, we have implementation actions. These are used on a regular basis. So development permit areas. I hinted at some of those already. These are really important. In fact, as a council, you've seen many development permit applications. This comes alive through the plan. That's where they all come from. Water course and stream side, natural hazard, greenhouse gas reduction, form and character. That's all the commercial and multi-family unit projects which have to be reviewed, and there's certain character that they have to meet. So you've seen those. We have not updated these in any substantial way in this particular update. And then the zoning, subdivision, and development cost charges. These are all separate bylaws. And after this official committee plan is adopted, we can anticipate some changes to the zoning bylaw to implement the OCP. In fact, anytime a zoning matter is addressed, we look to the official community plan. And I'll give you an example. If there's a rezoning request, it should be consistent with the direction of the plan. In fact, there's even a page in the document that says which plan districts. Like here, you know, you've got the different residentially oriented areas, you've got uptown and downtown. Which zones are consistent with those? So that's part of how the plan works. So that's my single picture that I hope, if anybody has any wondering about how a zoning bylaw links with the OCP, that's how it works. So that's just a little bit of diversion to put those pieces together. So the public engagement, I think the Advisory Planning Commission probably met about 12 times on this over the course of a year. And then we had one large community engagement meeting. And some of the evidence of that is on these walls. I just brought them back out just for illustration. I think many people enjoyed themselves. We had people of all ages. And I want to point out how that translated into the plan. What did we hear and what did we address as we worked on the updates? So there were about 50 people, some selected topics, which were the topics at hand: housing, climate change, transportation. And what do people love? So we also ask an open-ended question because people love writing about those things, and it's important for us to know. So what do people love? Well, trails, river, the lake, the community, the small town vibe, those are the highlights. We actually summarize this in the updated plan document there. They've got a few pages just describing this. What do you hope for? Well, housing came up a lot. Affordable, family, seniors, special needs. Better transit connections. Save the Duck Pond Bridge, also known as the Otaki Bridge. So there's some very specific things that come up that we can't necessarily it's important to hear this, and it's important to list these things so that we know where to prioritize things. What are you worried about? Losing community seasonal rentals. Losing the housing due to seasonal rentals, so people are concerned about that. Insufficient support for local business is a topic that came up. Monetizing, overuse of the river and the lake. I'm just highlighting some of the things that came up. And some more items. There was a very strong support, and here's where you can see where some of what the people said influenced how we finished writing the plan. Strong support to prioritize rentals. Affordable, 1-bedroom units in particular is a great concern here, and it comes up as the #1 need out of our housing needs assessment that we did a few years ago. So that was also supported by the public who came. A lot of support for climate mitigation, which means reducing the greenhouse gases, and adaptation means how do we manage, how do we live with the changing climate? Two separate areas. The public was very intensely interested in it. And I think that put us in a position with the Planning Advisory Commission that in fact, we have to continue to make this a really important matter. And so it was very affirming. I think a very clear message was given. And I'll just give you one example. People want the town to do more in reducing its own corporate emissions. So the province asks us to set goals on reducing the overall community emissions, so that's from everybody. But the other section, even though it's small, is the emissions generated by town operations, our own public works trucks, our own facilities, all of the everything that we run is assembled. We actually track this and report this to the province. And then they send us some money every year. We do the report, we get the money. But the citizens made it quite clear that they wanted us to do some more, I think, to do some big things. So just a very short deep dive into where some of the bigger changes are. I'll just look at transportation. So a few years ago, we did an active transportation plan, cycling, walking. And just so that we don't lose the importance of that plan, we stuck pieces of it in this document. It does make the official committee plan a little bigger, but they're very nice pictures. They're in there. They're pulled right out of that active transportation plan. I think they're very useful. Some of the things have already been adopted, like wider sidewalks is now under subdivision bylaw, for example. And we have a method now, because we've got a plan, we can apply for funding for bike lanes, even for improving this bridge, pedestrian bridge, those sorts of things. We're in a very good position for that. As I said before, housing is probably, I don't think any topic got more attention than housing. And so the priorities, and this is important to understand. If we're serious about the rental, if we're serious about the 1 and 2 bedrooms and the multi-units coming on stream, we have to prioritize what we approve. So the plan speaks to existing approved lots can get building permits, that's fine. There's a lot of those still. But small lot subdivisions like the one that's under construction on the Oak Lane, it's a 4-lot subdivision just behind the hotel, the motel. Okay, more of those we're in support of that, but the rest we have to prioritize as infill, duplexes, multiplexes, 3 to 4 units, townhouses, Those are the kind of projects we have to approve over the next 5 years if we're serious. And some rental only zoning, and just so you know, there's a bit of a sidebar. Because the town has received funding from the Housing Accelerator Fund from the federal government. One of the pieces is rental only zoning, so that has to be explored. And there's some positive developments in that direction. So there's already a play here to get these things to happen because of the funding we've received from the federal government, which is completely dovetails with where this sufficient community plan is going. Yeah, essentially that's it. So that's basically the 5 years. And I think, is this my last page? That's my last page. That's it. So I think I've covered it kind of, I try to be, I can spend just maybe 1 minute just showing you the maps, all these maps. If anybody wants to wander over and look at one of these maps, that's fine. There were some changes made to the land use maps, and those are the two over there. We have the large one that looks at the whole town. We gotta zoom in on the inset. So there have been some changes there, not very significant, but there have been a few changes there. And then the development permit areas for the employment lands and the commercial lands. I've already showed you this very bright orange wildfire hazard map. And all the maps on the other wall there are the, I'll just speak to that very briefly. People were very interested in these. We had a lot of comments on these. So mobility and transportation includes everything from trails to the primary roads, future roads, where we would see potential future bike lanes or enhanced infrastructure for cycling. People love the parks, open space, and public facilities map. We did update this. This town has a lot of parks. Have a lot of parks, a lot of names. In fact, we go all the way up to, we go all the way to Alpha 2. That's 26. Okay, 26. So all this has been updated. We even have tube access noted on the map. We did update that. We had to remove 1 or 2 that were considered unsafe. And then that's basically it. That's it. So those maps received a lot of information and from the public and the advisory planning commission that took a close look. In some respects, this is also a what do we have and where is it? And you can see at a glance all the really wonderful resources we have in this town and how they're spread out. And then it also speaks, the plan actually does have a list of potential improvements for each project. Anytime you're wondering, council or public works, you know, where do we put some of the money in the parks? Well, there's a list of all the things we'd like to see. So it's here in the plan. So that's it. That's my brief presentation. I hope that was brief enough.
Thank you very much, James. You look like a conductor up there.
Thank you. Yes, okay.
And the vision, is it 2020? Your vision?
Well, okay, the vision as printed here is from this current version. But for this new plan, the vision is the 2024 vision. Now it's, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yes, it is 20. It is. It is 2020. Yes, it is.
It was an optimist joke, so.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
No, with that, I personally want to thank the Area Planning Commission for all the work that they have done on this and the work they've done on the OCP update. If I may, before we get into questions and input, I'm excited about the rental only zone, which has been a topic of this table for quite some time. To see that implemented within the official community plan reinforces not only the need, but the opportunity for funding that would come with it. And I think we have some exciting opportunities coming forward that might accommodate within that 5-year housing plan. So hopefully we see it come to fruition. It's nice to see it in the official document. And just for information, this is what guides the town in its future development. This is the guiding light for for the zoning and subdivision that follow. This sees where you're going to be in the future, so this is the document that, allows us to move forward with successful, developments in the future. With that, I apologize for my soapbox. Is there any, questions or input on the portion of the official community plan public hearing? Please step forward, man. The owl won't get you back there. Oh.
Catherine Worsley, 320 Lake Park, Lake Cowichan. Thank you very much, James. Very impressive. I remember being at your meetings and it was wonderful to see the input and the public come out. So I have a question in regards to space and land use for industrial. I did not hear anything mentioned in regards to industrial land use, if there's going to be any scope or anything put in play in regards to that.
Please.
So. Yeah, you didn't hear the word industrial because we're using a new word, employment lands, okay? It's a broader category, but essentially. The plan directs future zoning for employment lands to be basically light industrial zoning is the zone that fits it, so. That's the word that's used now, it's a little bit of a broader capture. And so I'll just, if I may show. Not that map, if I may walk around here. Everything that's purple, by the way, purple is the official color of industrial. Okay, they're actually, yes, you chuckle, but there has been published. Colors for zoning maps have been published in North America. And not every communities used to follow them more strictly. But this is why, just a little background. So I'll show you first. So this purple represents employment land. So that's essentially the light industry. That's what that is. And we've identified what used to be called Block 200. And also land as you enter the town, the north side of Highway 18. One of those parcels is zoned light industrial. There are other parcels still zoned for residential, but 5 years ago, we had a bigger discussion about this, and we put it on here as employment land. And one of the reasons it's much easier to service, so it's probably the most likely to see that kind of development, just because of its access to the highway. And the servicing that's fairly close by. As opposed to this land, that's a whole other big question there. We need someone to come in through a pretty deep pockets to develop that piece. Someone has to be very capitalized. Because right now, there's a lot of deficiencies in infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, etc. So possibly someday that gets away. But the other colors, so just residential. Is always in the yellow scheme, yellow to brown. Yellow equals the lighter the color, the lower the density. The deeper the color, the higher. So the zoning bylaw kind of matches these colors. But that's why I'm using, why we use the orange, the orange, the yellow, the orange, the brown. So the darker the color on that spectrum, that's higher the density. Commercial is in the reds. So. That's a little bit of history on colors. Yes, there actually are publications that identify the colors for zoning. So hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think commercial properties want to be in the red.
It's a good one.
I came from Councilwoman Maca, I would give you credit for that, it wasn't mine. Any further public input on the OCP? Official community plan. So third and final time, looking for further public input. Having seen none. We will not be able to take any more public comments on this moving forward. And I declare the meeting now. I'm sorry, did you have anything? Oh,
James, one of them that I saw in there was just, maybe it would be a housekeeping change in the wording. But in 2.1, the plan area location, it's referred to as our electoral areas, and then it says Cowichan Lake First Nations Reservation.
Oh, I think it's been changed.
Hmm?
It's been changed.
It was still on there
Was it?
today when I looked at it, so Cowichan
Yeah.
Lake there, and then further down in the next one, it's called Lake Cowichan First Nations, which was their former name. And then further on, it says Sulasik Nation, so we're getting 3 different names. And so maybe if it's appropriate to contact our nations and say, what would you like to be? Yeah, Sulasik, yeah. And then I don't know how they feel about the wording reservation in there.
Yeah.
So that was one of my takeaways from that, if that's okay.
I apologize for not turning the council for your input. I will visit in and you'll be chastised
Okay,
accordingly later. Any further council and other questions?
I've got another one.
Okay, very well.
Park policies, 5.3.1.2. And H says ensure sufficient public toilet facilities are provided throughout the planned area. So these are our policies when considering park developments. But whether they're open or not seems to be against our policies, so that was a second.
That's more of an operational question.
Yeah, just did the thought that I saw, and then the other one is curiosity, because I'm a cat and it hasn't killed me yet, but. This one is more to do with industrial, but why are we seeing so many buildings where it's asking for concrete and steel?
You're looking at the guidelines.
Yeah, but I know when you go into Duncan, there's so many steel looking buildings compared to wood. I'm just curious, that's all. And then the reason I ask is because I remember one day that the Cisco truck pulled up along the business corridor, and it sat there for probably about a half an hour unloading in the summer. And all of a sudden we started smelling smoke and couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And the sun had actually reflected off the metal of the delivery truck and started to burn a hole into a tube that was hanging in front of Jason's store. And so I'm going, that's weird. It just, to me, says, why are you using steel when it has its dangers as much as wood would.
Well, okay. I've actually never been, so the guidelines for the employment areas have been put together with the sense that to kind of in keeping with what you often see in industrial type of development, and there is a lot of concrete and steel, and I think what we're trying to do is guide it in a way that's still aesthetically pleasing. That's the best I can say at that. I've actually never had to defend steel. You know, I will say this, I'm making just an observation.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying yes, that I agree with this approach, but you're seeing now even a lot of steel on sidings in residential construction now. It's an interesting shift, because I haven't seen that in previous years. But I thought that it was, well, and maybe, and the advisory planning commission, I think, agreed with me 5 years ago when we wrote these. Some creative use of concrete and steel is appropriate for industrial development. That's all I have to say. Never thought about the sun hitting these buildings and the potential reflection. At this point, nobody's come forward under those guidelines to build anything like that. That's the best I can say. I haven't, now that you brought that up, maybe in the next go round, we could take another look at that. Are we asking for too much concrete and steel? And may I go back to the washrooms? I just want to make sure I don't miss this. You're making a point that what we're saying in EOSP is contrary to other policy with how we operate the washrooms. What section is that in?
So that was in, well, he remembers 5 point,
2.2.
so that's page 80 of the official community plan. So it's our park policies that then says when considering your park development to ensure sufficient public toilet facilities are provided throughout the plan area. So we do put them in, but all I'm saying is we're putting them in, but are they all accessible
Okay, so you want to be sure they're accessible.
as to being opened, which.
More operational
Yeah,
than.
operational there. We just jumped off the
Okay,
paper that.
I think that's, okay, thank you.
That's not really. That wasn't directed to you, it was directed to operations. So.
So we don't have to change any words in the plan document?
Not in that.
So you're just pointing out saying we need to attend to this.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I understand.
And in reference to the industrial lands, concrete and steel, I think reference to the wildfire interface map would suggest that is why that was suggested within that industrial zone, which is very contiguous to the wildfire interface possibility. Under the designation of the map.
You're right.
Not very often I am. But any further input? So that will be coming forward for later discussion as well. And now I will declare the meeting adjourned. So that concludes the two public hearings.